This is going to be a 3-part series where I'm going to go in depth into the best tips and strategies that you can use to win at Population 1. If you want to get better at Population 1, make sure you stay until the end and subscribe to see the rest of this series. Now, I'm not the best at Population 1. I'm not the best player out there, and I won't pretend to be, but I did play as a beta tester for the game, and so I'm a couple months ahead of new players that are just joining the game just now. When I play matches, I end up winning a significant amount of the time, and almost always end up with the most damage and kills out of my entire squad. To illustrate, here's the board at the end of a game I played recently, where we killed every other team on the map. Now, I'm not saying all of this to brag, but just to establish the fact that I might be able to give new and even old players some tips that will help them to win more matches. So with that in mind, let's jump into the video. Location is extremely important in this game. You have to drop somewhere to find good loot quickly, and then you have to position yourself in an advantageous position within the zone to give you the best chance at winning. Most of the games I lose are because of bad positioning, and most of the games that I win are because of good positioning. So first, let's talk about where to start the match. In choosing a place to drop, here are a few pointers. Avoid dropping near other players. I do this on occasion, but knowing full well that I'm going to have to find weapons before them and fight them off before they know what hit them. It is a ton of fun to do, but could cost you the game early on. Avoid other players early in if you're playing to win. You need to find good loot and then beat other players because of your skill and not just because you found a gun before them. Also, try to drop in loot hot zone. There are certain parts of the map that have more spots for loot to generate. While all types of loot can be found anywhere on the map, certain areas tend to have more loot. This might change in the future, but as of the recording of this video, I find that the cemetery, armory, and observatory all tend to have a lot more loot close together compared to the rest of the map. Drop in these places if possible, and then fill up with shields, guns, heals, and backpacks as quickly as you can. That way, you can spend the rest of the match positioning yourself in a winning spot instead of just looting and looting and looting. One last tip is that you don't have to take the pods. You can just jump off the platform. This is useful if the platform is close to a good looting spot, but you'd have to be careful to see if other teams are dropping as well. If I see another team drop with me, I'll fly the opposite direction from them to avoid early conflict. Dropping gives you a slight advantage overall because you will get to loot quicker, allowing you to be more prepared to hunt other teams. On the other hand, if every single team drops without a pod, you'll have a significant advantage if you take your pod to the other side of the map and let the other teams kill each other early on. Before we talk about where to position yourself, let me give you a few tips regarding movement and the best way to get around the map. First, flying is much faster than walking. If you need to run from the zone or from an enemy, climb up a building and fly. This will make you move much quicker than just running ever will. This is also true for when you're downed. When you're down, you move much more slowly, but flying is still a lot faster than crawling. Use flying to your advantage. That being said, be careful when flying in the open air across long distances or over other teams. Other players can easily hit you mid-air, leaving you defenseless. This is especially true since it is nearly impossible to shoot while flying. Also, if you fly through the air, remember that you can take fall damage, so if you decide to drop, remember to spread your arms at the last second to avoid taking damage. Now, let's talk about climbing. Climbing is essential to this game, and you have to know how to climb quickly to get away from enemies or to ambush enemies. When climbing, you can toss yourself up instead of just purely climbing. This allows you to climb buildings faster. To toss yourself up, just flick your arm down, and you should jump up, and then grab the building with your other hand right before you start to drop. This way of climbing will take some practice to get it down quickly, but it will get you much higher, much more quickly than standard climbing does. You can use this same tossing motion to climb with one hand. If you're ambushing a player on top of the building, it might be better to keep your gun out and climb with one hand instead of wasting your time putting the gun away and then pulling it out again. To practice climbing, I like to climb the tower, then wait for the match to start. This gives me a chance to improve my speed, and I just love getting to the top and jumping off. So let's say you drop, you have good guns and plenty of supplies, now what? Let's talk about where you should go and good general positioning after you've got decent supplies. Pay attention to the zone and try to predict where it is closing and go there. It is usually really easy to predict where the zone is going to close in on, and the sooner you get there, the better. One benefit of taking pods instead of dropping is that you'll often see where the zone is going to start closing in on while you're in the air, and then you can try to drop in the zone instead of out of it. If you do end up dropping outside of the zone, you can still win. You just have to make your way to a good position within the zone as quickly as you can. You generally don't want to find yourself constantly running from the zone. This puts puts you at a tactical disadvantage. A common strategy is to attack teams running from the zone, since they have no choice but to move forward or die. This is a great attacking strategy, but it really sucks when you're the one running from the zone. To avoid this, make your way into the zone as early as possible. If you need more loot, just loot along the way. When moving to the zone, try to use the edge of the map to your advantage, and avoid getting stuck between multiple teams. Early on, I kept losing because we would get sandwiched between two teams that would quickly take us out. One easy way to avoid this is to move along the side of the map or zone. This way, you know that any enemy teams could only come from two sides of you, since you have the red wall on one side and the area you came from behind you. This isn't foolproof, but it will increase your chances of not getting caught off guard. Once you've made it into the zone, try finding high towers or buildings that you can climb. Being high up provides a couple of advantages. First, you can see other teams coming. Second, you can hit them with your long-range weapons. This forces them to try and find cover and move more slowly unless they are riding the zone, in which case you have easy targets that are forced to run out into the open. Third, being on top of the tower allows you to fly to other positions more easily in case the zone moves away from you. All else being equal, teams that are higher up and in the zone will win. So just to recap, get into the zone early and get into a high position where you can see other players. Doing this will give you the best possible advantage to win. Thank goodness this game doesn't allow you to erect the Taj Mahal in a couple of seconds like Fortnite. In fact, one of the most distinguishing factors that makes this game much better than Fortnite is the fact that building is a lot easier, simpler, and you can't build an entire building in 2 seconds. While you can still build, you're limited to building flat platforms that can be placed either vertically or horizontally. To build platforms, you need building material that can be found throughout the map. Each building material allows you to place 6 squares. The key to using the building material to your advantage is to use it sparingly. For example, I've tried to build forts or to block the entrances of buildings, but it has always put me at a disadvantage because the zone would move a different way than I thought, or other teams would throw a grenade inside and decimate my entire team. Instead, here are a few ways you can use building material to your advantage. The main way I use building material is to cover my back on top of buildings. As stated before, I like to climb to the top of towers and shoot people as they run into the zone, and sometimes these towers are flat on top without much protection, and so I build a few squares around me to give me some protection. I don't close myself into a box, however. I always leave room to peek out or to be able to run away. The only problem with this strategy is that it isn't foolproof because you can easily destroy the squares by shooting them, but having them there gives me a good warning that I'm being shot at before I take any actual damage. This prevents me from being caught off guard when I'm aiming at another team. The other main way that I use building material is to protect myself in tight situations. For example, maybe I'm the one running from the zone and getting shot at. I'll build in front of me to avoid getting hit. Another example that comes to mind is when I'm in a tight spot and need to revive a teammate or heal myself, I'll build several barriers to give myself a couple extra seconds before the enemy can shoot me. Using building material takes practice, but the more you try to use it, the more instinctive it becomes, and thus the more advantageous it is. Used right, it is another great strategy that you can use to improve your chances of winning. In the next video, I'm going to go in depth into combat and the different types of guns in the game. And the next video is probably the most important in this 3-part series, so make sure you subscribe so you don't miss that. And once it's released, I'll put a card here so that you can click on it. But for now, that's it. I'm out.